Hello, I'm Teresa Brown with the New Hampshire Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Program. I am very pleased to introduce the 6th e-learning module for assisting healthcare providers reduce tobacco use and dependence among New Hampshire's adults and now youth. This video is an opportunity to understand scientific evidence about vaping products, chemicals, and the health effects on the undeveloped brain. The information in this video explores New Hampshire youth vaping data, how vaping fits into a young person's value system, and practical tips for talking with youth about vaping. This module features dedicated New Hampshire tobacco use experts who separate facts from fiction, demonstrating the importance of routinely asking about tobacco use and guiding young patients not to start using or to quit using any tobacco product.
Electronic cigarettes, or e-cigarettes, are a diverse group of battery-powered devices that heat a liquid mixture to create a vapor, which is then inhaled. That's the act of vaping that people frequently refer to. These liquid mixtures most often contain a number of different chemicals, including nicotine and other flavorings.
We've done a really good job denormalizing cigarette use. However, vaping is on the rise, and vaping is something that is still seen as kind of cool. It's our job as public health advocates, pediatricians, and people who work with young people to make sure they recognize these are risky behaviors, these are harmful devices, and they are not really cool.
Vaping among youth is a critical public health issue. Vaping has increased to alarming levels in recent years and is more popular than combustible cigarettes among high school students. And we know a major concern is that youth who had not previously used tobacco are vaping now.
The 2019 New Hampshire Youth Risk Behavior Survey found that about 1/3 of high school-aged youth reported recently using e-cigarette devices, and this number only increased with increasing grade levels, so that by the 12th grade, 43% of high school seniors reported using e-cigarettes. This poses a significant public health but also individual health problem, because we know that these chemicals like nicotine can have potentially long-lasting health effects.
Because from a health standpoint, what we found with electronic cigarettes is that those who use vaping devices with nicotine, and 99% of them have nicotine as far as studies have shown, what happens is that those kids are then 3 to 4 times more susceptible to go on to using combustible tobacco products, primarily cigarettes, and we know the health effects of that. The health effects are still the #1 cause of premature death and disability in this country.
It took us more than 40 years to recognize the link between cigarette use and lung cancer, and even longer for the link between cigarette use and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. These are brand new products. They just came on the market in any way, shape, or form in 2006, and they've continued to evolve. The batteries have changed, the temperatures have changed, the chemicals that are in them has also changed, and we have not been able to keep up with the varieties and really understand what they do to the human body in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term.
So studies have demonstrated that youth understand the negative health effects of smoking cigarettes, yet with vaping, there's several misperceptions. Many youth and even their parents are not aware of what are in vapes. A common misperception is that it's only flavored water vapor, and we know that that is not true. E-cigarettes actually produce an aerosol that may contain harmful chemicals and other microscopic particles.
Many young people will start using vapes because they're attracted to the flavors alone. And the flavors are truly delicious. They smell great, they taste great.
And in fact, there are thousands of different flavors that these liquid mixtures come in, and it's part of the thing that attracts youth and young adults to their use.
And many of our young people have no idea that when they're vaping a Lush Stig Ice, that this contains very high levels of nicotine. This particular device, if they use it, contains 32 cigarettes equivalent of nicotine.
Nicotine is an addictive chemical, and so use early in life, particularly in young adults and adolescents, can set up a lifelong pattern of addiction and addictive behavior. We also know that nicotine can affect the developing brain. Nicotine can impair someone's mood and their behavior.
Nicotine alters brain development. It can affect cognitive function, memory, and attention when used while the brain is still developing and all the way into the mid-20s. Nicotine changes the way synapses are formed, which can harm parts of the brain that control attention and learning.
But the most important thing is that it indelibly changes the brain so that that brain forever will be susceptible to substance use.
The aerosol from EVPs have been shown to contain harmful chemicals such as diacetyl, benzene, nickel, tin, and lead.
There's so many products and devices, many youth don't actually know what's in their vapes. Nicotine, the flavors, the chemicals, other microscopic particles. And really, due to the lack of regulations on vapes, the variety of flavorings and ingredients, it can be a challenge to know what is actually being vaped.
There are other ingredients that seem pretty innocuous, but are as troubling as the nicotine itself. So for example, the main ingredients in e-juice are propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin.
But the message we need to get to all of our young people is that these are not risk-free devices. These are not just water vapor. These are not just flavor. And even if it was just flavor, there's still significant harm that comes off a chemical being heated to high temperature and breathed into your lungs.
The tobacco industry does indeed have a history of targeting groups of people to make them new customers. This is nothing new.
Our tobacco companies and our vaping companies are very well aware that flavors hook kids, and they are looking for a market. They're looking to make money, and so they really are targeting a new population. And the richest population and the freshest population are our young people who are gravitating towards these devices because they're palatable, they taste good, and they make them feel good.
They're targeting kids with products that are sweet, cheap, and easy to get. The vape industry, much like big tobacco, are appealing to young people with the goal of turning them into lifelong customers.
Teens don't like to feel they're being manipulated. And when I start showing them comparisons between old cigarette ads that show smoking as sexy or mature or fun, and current vape ads that reflect the same kind of characteristics, they see how they're being manipulated by a company that's just making money off of them.
And when we're thinking about a young person whose lungs are still developing, that's another area of great concern.
Focus groups have identified that most teens consider vaping rebellious but not so harmful, not very dangerous. And so that's its charm. We try to point out to them what the true dangers are and what the unknown dangers are. We didn't know about the dangers of cigarette smoking for 20, 30 years, for decades. We won't know the true dangers of e-cigarette use for 20 or 30 years because it takes time and exposure for these products to cause harm. So we'll be watching this cohort of kids for the next 20 or 30 years. And when they start to view themselves as guinea pigs for the benefit of vape companies that have made billions of dollars, it sort of frames that product and that activity in a different way.
The New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services has set up a quit line for youth ages 13 to 18 that can text or call. The program is called My Life, My Quit. And so any teenager can call 1-855-891-9989 or visit mylifemyquit.org and receive support from a individual quit coach.
These are a couple of devices that are the kind where you can change the voltage. On this one here, there's an up button and a down button, and the voltage on this can go as high as 220 watts. This is a lot of power in a very small device, and it generates a lot more heat than some of the smaller ones I showed earlier. The power being delivered to the coil is what directs what the temperature will be, and again, what comes off the coil and what gets delivered to the user as that complex aerosol. When you heat any solution in any of these devices, different temperatures will kind of emit different aerosol solutions. And so your mileage may vary depending on what is in the chamber, what kind of a drug or what kind of a solution is in that chamber, and again, what temperature is going across that coil, how hot it's getting. The higher and hotter things get, the more likely you've got some more dangerous components coming off of that coil that can then be inhaled for the user. The experience varies dramatically depending on the temperature. And again, some of them are things that you can change and some are things that you cannot change. I described this as 220 watts. The one that I'm hiding in my wrist only is 4 watts. This is the newest device that we've seen on the market. This is a Juul. And you can see that it's very small, obviously quite concealable because I've been talking with it right there in my hand, and perhaps you didn't notice it as I was gesturing. This device is also something that has a pod. And in this small pod is the juice, the e-juice that contains nicotine in this case. It has some electronics in there. It also has the coil in there. And this is the battery. And these go together very easily. And there's no button to push. You puff through this and create the vacuum, and it's actuated, and the complex aerosol comes through this. This is a 4-watt device, but it's very carefully crafted so that the delivery is very consistent. There's no really user modifiable parts inside. All you do is change the pod, replace it with another flavor or another refillable, and you're ready to go. So these are the newest devices that have really taken off and taken the world by storm, particularly among young people. As you can see, this is a pretty sleek looking device, easily concealable, and the amount of vapor that's generated by this is much, much lower than by some of those larger devices I was showing earlier. The difference in the amount of vapor that's being generated also makes it easier to hide. If you don't generate a lot of vapor, someone can just close their mouth, swallow it down, and when you breathe out, most of it's gone. Or people will breathe into their hoodie or into their sleeve. So in many instances, young people are using some of these small, highly concealable vapor devices and vaping during class, vaping in school, vaping in the bathroom, and really keeping this very private and very secret. And a lot of adults have been fooled. They think that their young people may not be using these devices, but indeed, it's just very easily concealable. This particular device is disposable. You throw it away when you're all done, generating more electronic waste. This is the equivalent of about 32 cigarettes. This little pod is the equivalent of nicotine of about 1 full pack of cigarettes. That's a very small container for a lot of nicotine.
The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force recommends behavioral interventions like education or brief counseling to prevent nicotine use and tobacco use in school-aged children and adolescents.
I think all patients should be screened, no matter what healthcare setting they're in, no matter what specialty they're in, everybody should be screened. This screening is easy. To use tobacco products, you have to include vaping devices, because a lot of people don't realize that vaping devices are tobacco products, or that juuling is vaping.
It's important for adults to understand what vaping is, what is actually in them, what the risks are. We want to know why youth are vaping, how they're getting them, and how to help them quit.
So how do I screen a kid for vaping? The very first question I ask all of my young people is, do you have any friends that are vaping? And I get the answer. And if I have a person who says, I have friends who are vaping, my very next question is, so have you tried it yet? And I say it in that way not because I want to cue them that I expect them to do so, but just to normalize it, that the answer saying yes or no isn't going to cause them any risk. I want to make it open that they can answer that question honestly, because it is really important. I do talk about vaping rather than e-cigarettes because our young people are not using the term e-cigarettes. And I'll sometimes give specific examples of things like Stig or Juul or Sorin, because using the specific example may help them understand what I'm talking about.
I would like healthcare providers to know that more than 60% of teens believe that occasional use of e-cigarettes causes only little or some harm. 2/3 of teens don't realize that e-cigarettes even contain nicotine. You have the power to help prevent a lifetime of addiction by intervening early and aggressively supporting patients who are already addicted to nicotine through prescribing pharmacologic support, facilitating cessation counseling, and sharing facts.
So another thing that I'm asked on a regular basis is, what do we do to help these young people who are pretty heavily addicted to vaping and who are really having trouble getting through their day?
NRT and other pharmacologic cessation aids in conjunction with behavioral counseling, can be used safely and effectively in adolescents and young adults.
The role of NRT and the role of nicotine replacement therapy is to make it more comfortable as you're becoming a non-nicotine user, a non-vapor, or a non-smoker.
When talking to youth patients about the effects of nicotine on adolescents, it's important to tell them about the harm that nicotine in any form can do to their growing brain.
So the other thing I think would be helpful is to direct some of these young people to services like My Life, My Quit, or the Quit Line, so people can specifically coach them through what's it like, how do you deal with a craving, how do you deal with withdrawal symptoms, what's a withdrawal symptom, or what is just anxiety, and how do you cope with both of those. Having a coach is always helpful.
In fact, we know from combustible cigarette data that 88% of people who smoke are addicted by the time they're 18 and 95% by the time they're 21. So if we can keep people from using tobacco products or these other substances prior to age 21, we take care of 95% of substance use.
The number of adolescents and young adults using these products is a huge concern, and one of the many reasons that the Department of Health and Human Services is vested in helping to prevent young adults from beginning these products, but we can't do it alone. So parents and guardians, pediatricians, and other healthcare providers and youth should be aware of the risk that e-cigarettes and vaping poses to their health. It's not recommended that anyone use e-cigarette products, as we don't know all of the substances that are in them, nor how they will impact our bodies. If someone is concerned about their health or experiences symptoms after using an e-cigarette product, they should talk immediately to their healthcare provider.
So my appeal to all of the pediatricians, family docs, health advocates, parents, teachers, anyone working with a young person, we need to make it really clear that these are not risk-free devices. They carry substantial risks. We need to make it clear that we don't want our young people to use these products, not because we want to take something away from them, but because we're concerned about their health. There's a lot of counter-marketing out there, or actually it's marketing directly to young people, trying to convince them that these things are safe, that these things are alternatives to cigarettes. But no one should be using cigarettes either. Cigarettes used as directed cause death and disease. And I think we've been able to convince our young people of that. But we can't consider these a good alternative. We need to make sure that we screen our kids and encourage them to stop at any stage. We don't need to wait for them to be addicted before we intervene.
The World Health Organization Director General from 1998 to 2003 was a Dr. Brundtland, and she was talking about combustible tobacco products, so I've changed some of the things for the vaping, but she said it much better than obviously I can say it. If we look back 20 years from now at vaping and what we did or did not do regarding vaping in youth and our children and grandchildren, we'll seriously question how people claiming to be committed to public health and social justice allowed the vape epidemic to unfold unchecked.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that it's important for school principals, nurses, teachers, student resource officers, and anyone associated with high school age youth to understand that vaping is a youth epidemic. My Life, My Quit is a free and confidential cessation service for teens who want help quitting any form of tobacco. Teens can text START My Quit or call 1-855-891-9989 or visit mylifemyquit.com to receive self-help educational materials through the mail or emailed. Text messages, live online chat with certified tobacco treatment specialists. The phone services consist of 5 one-on-one coaching sessions scheduled every 7 to 10 days with a certified tobacco treatment specialist who is trained to work with youth. In these sessions, they develop a quit plan, identify triggers for tobacco use, practice refusal skills, and receive ongoing support. Providers may refer young patients to My Life, My Quit using the Provider Web Referral, which is an efficient closed-loop online submission form that links to My Life, My Quit coaching services. The online form contains a brief section for agency information, which remains populated for future referrals. Complete the patient information section and check the box for HIPAA compliance, and then click Submit. A secure email is returned to the referring agency to confirm receipt of the referral. Within the next few weeks, My Life, My Quit will send additional feedback reports indicating the status of the patient engagement, such as the patient enrolled, the patient declined services, the patient was unreachable or did not answer their phone and did not return messages left by the Quit coach. If you need additional support or assistance, please contact me at 603-271-8949 or electronically at teresa.brown@dhhs.nh.gov.